Would you like to hear from two industry veterans about how we got not only into the industry, but how we also advanced in that industry? And would you like to hear our tips on how you too can improve your standing within the industry and grow as a DevOps engineer? Well, then keep watching because I've got a conversation for you. Hey everyone, Mike here, aka the Cloud Coach. I had a quick chat with a friend of mine over in the UK called James Belchamber. James and I actually met many years ago and worked together at Rackspace UK, and I had the idea of getting us both together on a Zoom call and get us talking about how we got into the industry and how we actually developed ourselves as engineers in order to continue to progress through the industry and just further ourselves, further our abilities as engineers, further our wages as well, actually increase our financial standing too, and basically get to the point that we're at now. As I just said, this recording was done on Zoom, so it's not going to be absolutely perfect quality, but the audio, you can actually hear what's being said. So let's head on over to the conversation and then we'll catch up again at the end of the video. And of course, if you're loving the content at the moment, then of course, hit the subscribe, hit the like, hit the bell. Let me know in the comments how you feel about the video today, and let me know if there's anything that you'd like to see James and I talk about in the future.
Can you hear that banging in the background, by the way?
Yeah, that's okay. It's just, that's okay. It's just life.
Let me close my door. That didn't really help, did it?
A little bit. No, it did actually. It's just like a slight little, it's just a child in the background now going, help, help.
Yeah. Well, you know, like the thing is that when you put them in the cupboard, they funny like that.
They want to get out, right?
Eventually they calm down as the oxygen depletes. My son is downstairs with my wife. I just want to be clear for the recording.
Yeah.
My son is downstairs with my wife.
Oh, jeez.
So the first thing is we were going to talk about was how you got into your first serious gig and how both of us got into it. And
yeah,
we both
right.
We both took really different approaches to this, right?
Mm.
So I got into IT. So I mean, I was fiddling with computers from a really young age. Which I don't know if that's that relevant, if I'm honest, because I think that it's relevant to the fact that I was so determined to break into the industry when I got to the point when I wanted to, but I don't think that it really affected it in the I think that anyone could have done what I did. But I was fiddling with computers from a young age, and you know, we couldn't, you know, my family didn't really have very much money, so these computers were built up of parts that had either fallen off the back of lorries or landed up in bins in various places. But I went and worked in a couple of places where because I wanted to avoid, I didn't want to get into tech. I didn't want to get into IT because it was a hobby, right? And I didn't want to hate my hobby.
Yeah.
But after a couple of, you know, £6 an hour jobs, I kind of came to the conclusion that maybe I did want to make my hobby my job because maybe I wanted a little bit more money.
Yeah.
So when I finally decided that, what I did was I just started, I tried to get a couple of interviews. I couldn't get any interviews. And the reason I couldn't get any interviews is because I was showing people my CV and it was like, mate, you've worked in a tile shop and you've worked in a hi-fi shop.
Yeah.
What are your credentials?
Yeah, yeah.
So I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to make my own credentials. And I started fixing computers door to door. I got like a metal box, like metal, like briefcase thing, which I had my equipment in. I did know how to do simple fixing of computers. Most of the time people were calling me up and they were like, my computer's slow. I'm like, right, okay. I think I had myself at £30 an hour. Like £30 for the first hour, and then £10 per hour thereafter, which I thought was loads of money, right? But of course, everyone else was like, wow, that's really cheap. And of course, they'd be really appreciative. And I'd be like, can I really charge these people for like using a couple of applications from the startup, from scheduled tasks and stuff like that? The first thing I had to learn was you need to respect the value of your knowledge. I didn't at the time, and I still struggle with it, right? But like, it's really hard to say, hey, no, actually, this thing that I find really easy, other people find hard. And you know, so free tea. And Davey,
so yeah,
you
like
expecting that? Did you think
no,
that I
I
had
was
that lined up?
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I can understand where you're coming from. Like this comes really easy to me, but so you don't want to charge for it, but then you've got to realize that actually your time that you've put into it, but also doesn't come easy to those people at all. It's black magic to them. Computers are just black magic to them. So when did you make the leap into what you could maybe call like your first systems administration gig then, where you had a network of servers to look after?
I'd say, I mean, it was a slow burn because, like I dropped out of college. I got middling GCSEs. Like I'd done everything wrong. So, I had to really start from the bottom. But I went from that and, started building up some experience, which I could put on my CV. And then I started sending out my CV to companies and being like, will you hire me? And they were like, no, your CV is obviously just you fixing computers out of the back of your car. But luckily we have a very underfunded and undervalued service in the UK that we pay for with applause instead of money, which is the NHS. So I was very lucky in that a very desperate man called me up, having seen my CV, and was like, you kind of know about computers, right? Yeah. And of course, in his head was thinking, this guy doesn't know, what kind of salary would be worth. So wouldn't complain about an NHS salary. So at that point, hired me. And that was my first job, which was a support engineer, help desk. So so it all went on from there. There was a lot of like servers that needed looking after. Everyone else there wanted to learn Windows. They thought that Linux was just this silly thing to learn. One of the back-end systems worked on actually System 5, so not even Linux, but a Unix-based system. I was the only person interested in touching it. So I got a lot of experience and knowledge there, and it kind of grew from there. I didn't get my first like kind of sysadmin job until maybe 3 or 4 years later. But that's really where I started. And it was all 100%, learning to value myself, or I suppose if you looked at it the other way from where I was looking at back then, conning everyone into thinking that I was actually knew what I was doing. Because I actually felt for a long time that I was just conning everybody.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you do, don't you? You do think that. Yeah, so mine was similar to you. I didn't really do too well on my GCSEs neither. Yeah, flunked college completely. Couldn't be bothered with college. I actually thought I was smarter than the tutors in college. It actually turns out I'm right. I am. I'm also earning far more than they do. But I actually didn't.
That's not a great lesson. That's not anyone that's listening. That's
not
a great lesson.
It's not actually. That's a very bad attitude. Fortunately, I've grown out of that attitude. Yeah, like I think you got into IT much earlier than me, because it was funny you said earlier that you didn't want to go into IT because you didn't want your hobby to be ruined. And it was quite interesting because when I was 16, 17, my best friend at the time, Chris, got he was 17 and he actually got a really lucrative job. Well, lucrative again to a 16, 17-year-old. He was getting paid 21 grand a year to do desktop support at a company just around the corner from his house. But I just seen it go downhill for him and he hated it. And that put me off for years. I thought that the same would happen to me. And so we both ended up just in call centers. And the one thing that actually, this is where we differentiate, is what got me to make the decision to move out of, I was working for Vodafone at the time and actually transition into an IT role, was I was on the phone to a customer, and it was an American guy living in London, and the computers were going really slow, somewhat ironically, I guess, that the computers are the one that sparked the conversation. And so the systems were going really slow. And I said, so obviously you're American. He was like, yeah. So how can you're in England? And we got chatting. And I said to him, what is it you do for a living? And he told me the name of the website. And I wish I could remember it now because I'd love to contact the guy and thank him. But he said to me, oh, this is what I do. And it was some website.com or whatever. And I went to it and I literally went to domain.com and it never loaded. And I was like, oh, your website's down. And he loaded it and he went, no, it's loading for me. And I went, is it website.com? And he was like, no, it's www.website.com. And I went, oh, you need to update the A record on the top level domain to point to your website so that people don't have to say www. And he went, why do you work for Vodafone if you know how to do that? And I went, yeah. That's a pretty good point. Like a little light bulb, and I went, yeah, this is bullshit. Like, why do I work for Vodafone on 16K a year? And then ironically, I got my first IT job 2 weeks later on 15K a year. So I actually went down a grand. But then that's where our careers are, I think, kind of very different. But then they align today, I think. Well, no, now they're very different because you've moved on to this training, but I'd like to go now.
You won't edit that out. But yeah, like definitely we kind of had that point in the middle where we kind of, and then we've kind of somewhat gone our own separate paths though.
Yeah. Well,
like I think that we've both landed up really interested in like teaching, right? So
yeah, it's quite interesting because so I got my first role and then very quickly got to Rackspace, which is where we then met. Within a few years. It was actually pretty much 3 years I got to Rackspace. First year was Comtech, second year was UK Fast, and then I hit Rackspace when I moved down south. But yeah, from there we've kind of gone DevOpsy full-time roles. Then we contracted, and then I moved to Australia. Yeah, and now I'm at the point now where I want to teach people what I know and how to get in the industry. And
one of the things that it's very tempting to take from both of our stories, because it's true, is that we were both really interested in tech. Like I was picking apart computers as young as I was able to. One of my earliest memories of fixing a computer was one of my babysitters. Her husband was away, and she'd let me use the computer as long as I didn't break it.
Yeah.
And of course, the first thing I did was break it. So I was like, right, I need to fix this before the day's out because otherwise I'm never going to be able to touch the thing again. Anyway, it turned out that the way that I'd broken it is by leaving a floppy disk in the disk drive and restarting the computer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But like I was 11, like 9, 11. I don't think that you need to necessarily be as nerdy as us to get into it.
Yeah, not necessarily. I think I've met people on my Discord so far within my community who are trying to get into the industry, and they're not necessarily nerdy. They're just like engineering. They like creating things. And for some people that's software, and for some people that's infrastructure. Some people it's networks, and so on and so forth. And they're not necessarily nerdy people. And some of them have come from backgrounds. A few people have come from like a background in marketing or accounting.
I hesitate to use the word nerdy because I don't think either of us have really ever fitted into the stereotype or anything, but we definitely have both spent a lot of time fiddling with computers. We enjoy doing that kind of stuff. We do it on our free time, right? What I think people should take from our stories is that actually, and I'll be clear, it's not an egalitarian industry. Like there's a lot of like old man's shoes and like there's a lot of that stuff going on, but just purely because of the speed that it's growing. Like, and it's not like, you know, the leaders of the industry are kind of being like more egalitarian or more kind of progressive than any other industry. It's just it's a reality of the industry that it's growing so fast. Like I speak to people all the time that are saying, I can't get the staff, you know, and half the time what they mean is I can't get the staff at the price that I want. But like the other half of the time, they're literally saying like, I am putting these things out and I'm not getting applications from people. And so, you know, so what I'm doing here in the UK, working with Generation UK, which is a charity that works to get people employed, is to get people to the point where they can take on some of these first jobs and, you know, kind of work through like what we did. But I don't think that you need to be that obsessed with it. You just need to, and you probably see in your community, you just need to take an interest.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you just need to be willing to understand that it takes time, a bit of perseverance, and ultimately, you know, computers are really logical, right? They do what they do what you tell them to do, and so you don't need to be nerdy to program a computer. You just have to take the time to learn a syntax, learn a language, and just trial and error. I think one of the biggest things I find, again in my community, some of the people is they're afraid of failure. And I don't know if you've noticed that in your students, but like they're afraid of like writing a bit of code and running it because if it fails, then, oh no, they fail. But it's like, yeah, but dude, it's a piece of software. It doesn't mean anything. Like if it fails, you haven't irritated the computer. It's not got emotions. It's just broken code. Just learn to fix it. And then you've advanced yourself. And it's that logical computers that I remember I wrote a blog post a while back saying, programming is free to learn, free to get into, and it's just free. Like everything's free about programming. The IDEs are free, the languages are free, the compilers are free. Most of the education, like 90% of it, is free, and the other 10% might be if you go to Udemy and maybe buy a course or something, or some private platform like my own. But other than that, it's basically free to get in the industry.
And that's really different from how so I say it's different and the same, because like when we were starting out, there was definitely free, but free was definitely also very associated with the open source community.
Yeah.
Of course, it wasn't the same. But I remember, one of the things I did was I went along to a place in London where they were like, if you take out this 20 grand loan, like £20,000 loan, then we'll teach you how to be a, what was at the time, a Microsoft certified support engineer. An MCSE, I think it was called.
Yeah, that's
and it
right.
was like, they'd almost convinced me that it was that it was going to cost me 20 grand to start in my chosen career path.
Yeah.
And that's just crap. That's just so much crap.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right. There's lots of free stuff to learn about. And I think also, and like even Microsoft now, like realized that they can't, I say Microsoft, but the people around the Microsoft community, really, because it wasn't Microsoft that have realized that, you can't charge people for stuff like this because, at the end of the day, the industry is itching for people to get into the business. Maybe you can charge people by, charging them or getting like money out of them when they get hired or something like that. Maybe. I mean, there's a couple of things like that, like boot camps and stuff like that. But honestly, I don't think that it's worth it. I think that, what you should be looking at is, definitely things cost money. Like, like the stuff that you do, it costs money because it costs you time to build. But, I don't think that you would reasonably expect to go and charge 20 grand per person. And also, like on these courses that I'm doing, so this is one that I'm doing. So I've just finished another one as well. And what I've started saying to students is, I'm not teaching a technical course because I truly believe that although there's lots of technical stuff you need to learn, because you never master what you're doing, right? I don't know if you agree with this, but I would say that in IT, you never achieve mastery so much as you achieve mastery of learning, because there's so much new stuff coming out. There's so much new stuff to learn. Like, you go back like 5 or 10 years and what we're doing now is so alien to so 10 years ago, how would we do a change at midnight?
I would do
a change at midnight. Do you remember how we did it? Do you remember like these big documents that we had to fill out?
Oh, the run books.
People on night shift how to do. Yes. Books,
yeah. They're just crazy.
We would just write. It'd be like a Word document where you'd write out what you were going to do. And nowadays, we wouldn't even think about getting someone on night shift to do that. We just set up an automation and schedule tasks and stuff like that to be able to handle that, right?
Yeah.
So I guess my point is that it changes so often that I'm not really teaching a technical course. And if there's one thing that people need to learn is that actually things like being able to grow and being able to accept that not knowing something is actually the first step towards knowing something. And that if you're constantly in a position where you don't know and you feel like you're on the edge of your knowledge, then that's actually good, because what you're doing is you're chasing experience and you're chasing knowledge. And that means that in 10 years time, and I often feel like this, you'll be sitting there thinking, I don't know how I'm going to fix this, but I'm going to work it out.
Yeah.
Exactly the same as you did 10 years ago, but you're getting paid 10 times as much for it.
Yeah, definitely. I think you can definitely, in IT, you can become very good at something, like, especially in programming, you can become very good at a particular language. You can optimize really well. But even then, it's more about, can you learn? You need to learn how to learn. What would you say is the key thing that's allowed you to continue to advance in your career and step up your game and charge more and ask for more money and so on and so forth? But I guess you've sort of answered it right. One of the aspects would be the ability to learn.
So I'll expand on it a little bit then, because I think that's a really interesting question. So firstly, I should say, I don't think that anyone has to do this. So if, for example, you're getting into this, but you've also got other priorities, like you've got a young family and things like that, and you want to be able to like go a bit slower, or, Like you just get into a job where you're happy where you are. I don't think that kind of growth at all costs is like super important. So if you get into something that you like, then awesome, stay at it and just kind of work your way to getting better at it. However, the way that I've just, my mindset has always been the opposite of that. My mindset has been that if I feel like I'm starting to become the expert in the room, then I need to find a room with smarter people in it.
Right.
And I've got to be the dumb person again. And so throughout my career, what I've tried to do is I've tried to assess, like, for example, if I'm in a team of people, if I'm starting to become an expert, then great, that's nice. And I like that, but that means that I'm going to get some practice at, like helping other people and stuff like that. It means that actually my technical growth is going to slow down.
Yeah,
so I'd
right.
be like, right, maybe I should be looking at another company. Maybe I should be looking at going up. I need to be honest with myself. I want to grow. And at that time, I looked around and went, right, which company can I go to where I can be around some really smart people?
Yeah, I think, that's a classic one actually, is you meant to sort of, I read that you're meant to sort of surround yourself with people who are not only smarter than you, but also not as smart as you, so that you can be the mentor and the mentee. I think that
Yeah.
I think that that's really important, because I think what you're saying there is, if you place yourself in a room where you're, like if you take the rack space as the example, if you place yourself in a room where you're the L1 and everyone's L3s, then the idea is that you learn loads, right? And then I think the better situation, in my opinion, is to be in a room where there's the L3s, the L2s, and the L1s, because then you've got the L2s to learn from and the L3s, and then when you become the L2, the L1s are then learning from you, and you're still learning from the L3s, and then I think when you become the L3, I think that's then you're like, well, okay, well, what's the next stage at this point? But I think I would agree. I think for me, it also boiled around chasing technology as well. I really wanted to kind of, I was at Comtech in North Wales, and I learned a lot there. But the IT budget, unfortunately, was literally whenever the boss could get the credit card out of the owner's wallet to buy stuff off of eBay, that was the IT budget. And so it was a pretty much shoestring budget for that place. So I learned a lot. And so I looked to the UK fast, and then my wage jumped like £7,000 instantly. And then I was around all these smart people all of a sudden. And then that definitely helped me grow as a person, grow technically, and start looking at automation for the first time. And then when I eventually got to Rackspace, that's when I was introduced to like Chef and Puppet. And so that was really my interest. And was like, well, I can't introduce these technologies here because they're not really actually being used at Rackspace at that point in time. I just know about them and I'm reading about them. They're really cool. And then that's when Skyscape came up. And Skyscape were like, actually, we want someone to actually automate our stack. So I was like, well, that's actually another 10 grand increase. And it's 5 minutes around the corner from my house. And I get to automate a private cloud. So I'm like, yeah, definitely. So I think not only having the smart people around you as well, but also getting to actually delve into these new technologies and implement them through to production, I think is a very powerful tool as well.
Yeah, and I think that there's a difference, and something that I definitely would do more now than I would when I was younger is be willing to be the smartest. I say smartest, and I mean, that's because that's the saying, right? Always try and be the dumbest person in the room.
Yeah.
But what I really mean is always try and surround yourself with people with experience. And I think that nowadays, where I am in my career, I am happy to be the expert in the room on a technical level, and to actually, surround myself with people that are experts in other things.
Yeah.
And actually we work more as a cross-functional team. So I think that there's definitely a switching of gears between where I was 10 years ago and where I am now. So I'd say that, with people that are starting off in the industry, definitely chase being, in a room where you almost feel like you're drowning. You're just on your tippy toes. Because that's where you're going to develop the fastest. But yeah, definitely. Like, for example, you going onto a company where you could kind of, I suppose, not call the shots, but you could kind of start being a bit more creative and assertive in your designs. That's definitely like a privilege that you got by trying to make sure that you're always learning and you're always developing over your career previous to that. So yeah, I think that's very valuable. Although it does contradict what I say, I think that it's also very, very pertinent. So.
I hope you found value in that conversation. It was a bit muddled, a bit all over the place. Again, future videos we're going to work better to improve the quality and the consistency for you, the viewer. But I believe you should be able to actually derive some value from that video. And of course, we'd love to hear in the comments how you actually got started in your career too. How did you get into the industry? What was your first job? Let us know. And of course, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. It's really, really appreciated. Thanks very much, and I'll see you next time.